So a few years ago, I made a video about buying a car in Quito, Ecuador, and we're about to sell that little car, get a new one, and so I figured it was a good time to do a follow-up video. So this is buying a car in Quito, Ecuador, part 2. The car we bought before was a little Volkswagen that was a great around the city car, but I've got a little farm outside the city now. I had a Toyota Hilux that I used for it, but it was a really old, beat up one, and didn't really keep up with the Toyota reputation. It wasn't roadworthy anymore. So I'm gonna try to get something that will replace both. It'll be a good city car and a 4-wheel drive that I can get up to the farm in. And to do that, we're probably gonna go with a Suzuki or a Chevy Vitara. Both car companies have had the Vitara name. Basically, they kind of trade the car model back and forth. So specifically, we're going to look at a couple Chevy Vitaras that are, one's a 2009, one's a 2010. You'll see, once again, cars here are very expensive. 2, sometimes 3 times the price in the US for used cars. And a lot of expats get sticker shock when they see the car. But the thing to keep in mind is, unless you're getting a car that's too old, like my old Hilux was, and parts are hard to find, unless it's in that situation, repairs are super cheap. Keeping it on the road is cheap, gasoline is cheap, so the operating cost is way cheaper, but the purchasing price is way higher. With that in mind, here we go. Oh man, I kind of forgot how hard it is to breathe in Quito. Not just the altitude, but the pollution. Hey. I also forgot how noisy it was. This is a loud city. Everyone's honking. There's a lot of loud vehicles, a lot of big roads. It's a noisy, polluted city. Not my favorite part of Ecuador. Quito continues to be a bit of a boom town with just a lot of construction going on. Always seems to be a lot of large buildings going up. The city is growing, constantly growing. All right, so we just headed down to the south of the city to look at this car right here, but I'm not impressed with it. It's got looks like it's got a few dings. It's been hit from behind. Looks like it's had the hood replaced. I'm not sure how bad of a wreck it was in. They want $11,000 for this 2009 Suzuki Vitara. I don't think we're going for it. We're not even gonna go get it checked out by a mechanic. We're just gonna move on to the next one. The other thing I just noticed about this car is it's behind on its registration by like 3 years. So yeah, something's going on with that car. Definitely has problems that I don't want to buy into. I'm getting warned about having my phone out here. I know it actually is a little bit dangerous. Crime is very high in South Quito. We only came down here to look at this one car, and it was a waste of time. It's a long drive from North Quito to South Quito. It's a long, congested, it's like a long, narrow, congested city. It's shaped like a snake. So getting from the north to the south took us about 50 minutes to get down here, just in non-stop traffic. Took us about an hour to get here from the south. It was a total of about $24 to take the taxi to the south and then back up to the north. Pretty good price considering how far we actually went. Yeah, now we're gonna look at another car that this one's not at a dealership, it's a private seller, and it's a little more money than I wanted to spend, but it's probably in much better condition. So let's cross our fingers and see how this one goes. All right, well, I'm waiting for the mechanic to check the car out. I'm gonna get some lunch because it's gonna take about an hour to check it out thoroughly. And I'm not just taking it to any mechanic. I've made that mistake before. In fact, the Hilux that I had it checked out by 2 different mechanics, and still they missed a bunch of stuff. So this time, first I got a recommendation for the mechanic, and now the mechanic's gonna give me a recommendation about this car. Alright, we're going to sign some paperwork for this car. Because we have to wait a couple days for my wire transfer to get here and clear the bank, we're gonna go put a little down payment on it and do some paperwork. I think at a notary for an agreement to purchase the car for the said price. So like all things in Ecuador, this process of buying the car is stretching on a little longer than I'd like it to. We could have gone and gotten the car today, but we would have had to transfer the money for the car without having any paperwork, which is way too high risk. We're definitely going to have the paperwork for the car before we transfer, or at the same time as we transfer the payment for the car. Not taking a chance on paying for it and then having them be like, thanks for the money, ciao. So I'm going to wait another day to actually get the car. Faster process than I've experienced in the past. When it comes to banks and money in Ecuador, nothing ever seems to go smoothly. And once again, the bank is throwing a monkey wrench into this car purchase. In the past, when I transferred more than $10,000, it gets held up by the bank a little while, and you gotta show a bunch of documentation to prove that the money is legit and not money laundering before they'll release it. So I've taken to transferring amounts under $10,000, and everything had gone smoothly until today, when excuse my language, but an absolute bitch of a bank manager decided her new policy at her bank was $5,000, not 10. Not the policy of the bank in general. I've had this happen before with a bank manager going a little mad with power. I had an account get frozen for months, and had to fight with the bank because they were trying to keep my money. Banking in Ecuador is tough. It's just a pain in the butt. The banks really abuse the people here. And yeah, I mean, it is necessary to have a lot of rules around banking because money laundering does happen, and it does happen particularly in Ecuador because Ecuador uses the dollar, and it's located right between Colombia and Peru. There's a lot of drug money moving through, and there are need for some controls, but when you're following all the rules and you've justified the transaction and they still try to just snatch your money and keep it and treat you like garbage because they can, man, it's frustrating. So we're supposed to go pay for this car in like an hour, and we can't get our money out of the bank. Pretty mad. Man, look at that beautiful new car. The car did great coming up here. That 4x4 low. I think it actually works better than my old Toyota Hilux did coming up this hill. It was really, really muddy, and it's very steep. You can't see it, but behind the corn there's a really, really sharp incline. And this car did great. It's gonna work out well. That's the story of buying this car, $13,000. As I said, I had it checked out by a mechanic real carefully, a mechanic that I had recommended. He did miss something though. The first road trip I took it on. Now, this is a pretty, put it to the test road trip. I took off from Quito, went over the Andes Mountains, over into the Amazon, looked at some properties over there, which will be some upcoming videos. But on the way back, coming up the Andes Mountains, I noticed a little slipping in the clutch. So the mechanic did miss one thing. Some other stuff to talk about. So I mentioned in the video about the Matricula. That's something to really look at carefully when you're looking at cars in Ecuador, because the Matricula is your registration, and the fee for it is pretty high on some cars, and it's cumulative. So sometimes you'll see a vehicle that's got a suspiciously low price. Well, it's usually because it's like $2,000 or $3,000 behind on its Matricula. The fee to get it street legal is just astronomical. And sometimes it's because it's got some mechanical problem that's hard to fix. Maybe the part to fix it is not available in Ecuador, and you might have to import a part for a couple $1,000s to get it street legal again. So watch the Matricula. Insurance. So you get a very minimal amount of insurance with your registration. I can't remember exactly. I think it pays for like bodily injury to the other party in the event of an accident. I'm not 100% sure of that, but that's all that's required in Ecuador. It's real advisable if you're going to be driving here to, especially if you have a nicer car, to carry some additional insurance, especially because it's high stakes on the roads here. If you get in an accident and you can't, come to some arrangement on the spot with the other party, it's very likely everyone's going to jail until a judge sorts it out. And you don't want to sit in an Ecuadorian jail until a judge sorts it out. So yeah, this car is about to go on its second road trip. I'll get a better sense of how it's going to do. Once again, going over the Andes Mountains, but this time the other way, heading to the Pacific coast, going on a little vacation to Tansupa, which is northwestern Ecuador. And yeah, I'm sure. Oh, there's one other thing I want to talk about. So the last video I made about buying a car in Ecuador, when people heard about the high prices of cars in Ecuador, like this Suzuki Vitara is a 2010, 150,000 kilometers. It's $13,000. It's a little expensive, and that was actually a pretty good deal for Ecuador. So people are like, why don't you just import one? Well, I would if I could, right? Like cars are that expensive because it's not that you can't import one, it's just that after all the fees and taxes you pay to do so, it's even more expensive. So there's no sense in importing one. The only loophole on that is if you're an Ecuadorian that has moved overseas for over a year and then you're returning, you can get a break on the import taxes, but otherwise it just doesn't make any sense. So that's why I don't import a car. I'll know everyone that doesn't watch all this video because they're going to ask that question. They're going to watch 5 minutes of it and be like, oh, they're expensive there. Why don't you import one? So yeah, peace out.